I'm Carlo, also called Rhea to others. I'm 36, turned 36 this year. I started biking when I was a kid, but I didn't really go out until COVID hit. So when the roads were empty, that's when we started.
Okay, so I'm Gabby Jimenez. I'm 27 years old. I've been cycling, I guess like cycling since 2022. I think during the pandemic, it was a way for me to make friends, a way for me to go around without needing a permit. It's also become a way to make friends, a way to explore, and then it also turned into a way to get to work, a way to both work out, of course explore beyond what I usually drive or beyond where I can go through other means of transport. So I think it's also been a mobility thing for me.
To be honest, it's just a pastime. So it's what I do outside of work. It's what I do before work. And it's not just cycling, it's planning, it's trying to explore new places, fixing the bike, finding out what's wrong, and of course, doing the rides with other people.
I was a super randomer last year for 2024, and I also won the unrestricted gravel race for 120 kilometers. To include in that, my partner for the race, Mark, he also podiumed a lot in the past years. He was first place in his age cut for Gravelton, I think 2 years ago. And second place twice in his age category for unrestricted as well, for the 320 kilometer categories.
I wouldn't say I have achievements, so to speak. So I don't really race, but what I like to do is to explore and to do quote-unquote crazy rides. So I do long rides. I combine different loops. I do long rides, but one that I'm probably most proud of is doing the 1,300 Onax last year. So that was a first, and apparently I liked it, and this year I did Bentang Jawa. Bentang Jawa is an ultra that is hosted in Indonesia. You essentially go from Charita Beach, which is on the west side of the Java Island, and you essentially bike all the way up to Banyuwangi, which is on the east side of Java Island. So Bentang Jawa is 1,500 kilometers.
You go through around 16,000 to 17,000 meters of elevation. So you go through a lot of different types of terrain, a lot of climbs, a lot of coastal roads, and of course, Mount Bromo. So you actually climb a volcano towards the end.
So I think it was one of the first ultras in Indonesia. It's also one of the most famous ones for dot watchers there.
It's an unsupported ultra race, so that means also if you're joining solo, you can't draft behind anyone, you can't get external support, your own support. And if you're a pair, same rules, but you can draft behind each other, but only each other. I just really wanted to finish within less than 6 days, hopefully. But we also targeted the top half of the pair category.
My goal was to beat my friend Otago. That's it. August 10 is the actual race day. So I think, woke up at around 4:30 and warmed up for, I think, 4 to 5 kilometers to the start line. And the start line was in Charita Beach. And just as I was going into the resort, I actually crashed.
Holy shit. Budas.
So I crashed right before the start line. I did not see a hole, I think. And I went into the hole and crashed on my left side. Around, I think, 10 to 15 minutes after that, it was the actual start of the race. So you could see everyone was kind of ready. Everyone was adrenaline pumped.
I think I'm pretty used to start line releases being a bit more high-paced than it should be. So a lot of us were very, excited when we got released from Coconut Island.
When we started the race, It was obviously very fast, so all of the elite guys were pulling. There was one guy who was pulling, I think, more than 40 kilometers per hour. He was the champion the previous years, together with his dad. And then everyone was just riding him. I was even riding him for around 10 to 15 kilometers until I realized I should not do this anymore.
We rode with a bunch of people throughout, I guess, the first 15K, 10K. It was still pretty dark and cold at around 5:30 in the morning.
Racers started to disperse.
Kilometer 25, the first climb. The peloton's now gone.
People were kind of started to be alone, of course, except for the pairs. And it was also the time that the steep climbs hit.
Ang saya dito!
During the first few climbs, it would suddenly go to, let's say, like suddenly 16, 18%. I really had to get used to pacing myself in the climbs. Like, I think I cramped a lot then.
So there was one steep climb, I think 21, 23%, which hit us out of the blue, and you could see people were already walking at that point.
We'd also see in the climbs a lot of other people struggling. So I think it helped the morale a bit more, especially in the first day.
And then by kilometer 40 or 50, we started entering back roads of different towns. There were also some gravel areas that kind of surprised us on the first day. It was pretty much the same for the whole first day, but the main problem was that there was a storm for some reason. It was kind of hard to go up, and it was especially hard to go down, mainly because even though you wanted to go fast on the descents, it was too early to take some risks that could really end your race very early.
I think it was a bit hard to get through the rain, but I think in the end it was also in our favor because we weren't overheating in the climb, so we got to get through it without really burning ourselves out. But it's just a bit hard because you have to deal with wet shoes and all.
So I tried looking for a hotel at around kilometer 350, 360, just as I planned, but unfamiliarity with the place really challenged me. So I didn't know what hotels look like. I didn't know what homestays look like. I didn't even know how to ask for a room. I ended up getting a room at around kilometer 400, which is 50 kilometers away from the checkpoint. And at that point, when I checked the tracker, I was actually top 10, which was number 9.
So yeah, I think our pace then was a bit slower than we expected because of the rain. So we were riding until 4 in the morning. Also because we couldn't find a place to stay at. So at 4 a.m. we did find like a homestay. Yeah, we were still a bit high-spirited and having a bit more energy than when we found a place to stay. Yeah.
I woke up from the hotel. My jerseys, my bib shorts were luckily dry enough to not be uncomfortable when I wore them after 3 hours of sleep. There was an Alpha Mart right outside the hotel, so I decided to have breakfast there. And I actually met Sebastiano, who was from Italy.
I think we rode out a bit late also because we slept at around 5 in the morning. So we rode out around almost 8 a.m. I think. So we had fried chicken for breakfast at a local grocery. And then that's when we realized that we were a bit short on time to reach the cutoff time for checkpoint 1. So I think from there, we had to pick up the pace and take less breaks.
After 50 kilometers, I reached the checkpoint. So the checkpoint was actually somewhere in the coastline along the south end of Java Island. The day was actually supposed to be flat and easy, but what was surprising was that the coastlines had very steep climbs. It was pretty weird how the coastlines were made because you had to ride for around 5 to 8 kilometers on flat roads, cross a bridge, and then instantly climb for 100 or 200 meters. That was 18, 20, 21% steep. There was nothing gradual. The only problem was that kind of repeating profile was the same for around 100, 120 kilometers all day.
Yeah, so we had to pick up the pace leading up to checkpoint 1. So we were riding the whole day through more climbs and more coastal roads. So the coastal roads were flat, but we had to get through the headwind as well. So that was still, we really couldn't rest that much.
So when I reached the checkpoint, I was 19, so 10 places down. And of course, that kind of lit the fire on my competitive side. But at that point, I was still ahead of Otavo, which is the goal.
We got to checkpoint 1 4 hours before cutoff. But then when we got there, I opened my bag and then turns out the plastic of my brevet card was torn. So the card was soaked. So that's also grounds for disqualification. Before having it stamped, we had to rush outside. We had to find an iron from the store in front. And then I think that was when things got sour between me and Mark. We were really just annoyed that this had to happen already so close to cutoff time. So yeah, we dried it out with an iron and then we had it stamped and we rushed out looking for food for dinner.
Unfortunately, I think around 50 kilometers or 80 kilometers after the checkpoint, I felt something I've never felt before. So there was a streaking pain right at the outside of my right knee.
Kilometer 4, 65, something like that. My knee is becoming unbearable.
When I felt the pain, I first thought it was just something that I could handle at first. And then when it kept nagging me, when it did not disappear, whatever I did, whatever I took, no matter how long I iced it up, I kind of got scared for a while, but I thought it would still disappear. It was something new. So I've never had knee pain before in any ride ever. But I kind of had an idea of what stretches to do, how to kind of let it recover while you're riding, and how to let it recover while you're off the bike. Unfortunately, nothing worked. And the pain was there, but it was still manageable that day. I was just really scared that tore or it would be unmanageable in the next few days. I had a total of 8 hours spent in the hotel. Of that, I think I slept around 6 hours. The other 2 hours was spent more on researching kind of what kind of pain I was experiencing. Was it in the knee? Was it in the patella? Was it in the ITB? And then finding ways to stretch it out or at least alleviate the pain. So apparently it worked. Whatever stretches I did before sleeping helped remove the pain, especially when I woke up.
Actually, I got a message from Hasif. He won first place for pair the year before, but he wasn't racing. And then he was sort of reassuring me that we were doing good time and a good pace. Actually, that was when he gave some really good advice for racing as a pair. So he said you just really have to have one person in command of your race. So even if you're racing as a pair, one person sort of controls it and sort of sets the pace, sets those kinds of things.
The day was pretty much flat. So we were going through lots of towns and lots of back roads, lots of farmlands, to be honest. But that also meant that the roads were not as good as the previous days. So there were lots of holes. There was also a lot of traffic along the way there.
590, close to 600. At 7:50, there's a bike shop planning to buy a bidon and a bottle cage so that I can last longer in the bike and stop stopping. Especially on climbs like this. Oh, my knee again.
The only two things I remember about day 3 is that I started to get a rhythm of biking for around 45 minutes to an hour, feeling the pain, stopping, icing it up, eating and drinking my carb drinks, and then repeating the same thing the whole day. So I think I stopped more than 10 to 12 times that whole day just to nurse my knee.
I think at that point, like, I knew that I just had to follow what Mark would say, or like, if Mark would say na, yeah, we can do this time for the checkpoint, or we can do this distance for this day, I just had to trust his judgment. But that also meant a sort of delegation of tasks between us. So he was in charge of pace and bike mechanic tasks, and then I was in charge of finding food or finding a place to stay. We fought later on that day because we couldn't find the place that I found on Google Maps. So I think we were circling around the same area for an hour or more than an hour. And we couldn't find a place to stay. We couldn't find it. We decided to go on with the route, go on with the race. And then that's when we also saw Rai, one of our friends, one of our Filipino friends who crashed on day one. He seemed to be doing okay, just tired, of course. And then after that, we did find a place to stay. So I think that was a good day 3. So we did a few 100 kilometers that day, but we were still short of our own personal target for the race.
And the second thing I remember about that day was Daindels.
Kilometer 810, the first gravel section.
I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but Daindels was one of the first real gravel sections of the route. So I think it was more than 20 or 25 kilometers long. It was what seemed like a protected forest.
Nice.
It was well maintained.
Smoke machine.
And then you would actually bike also along a creek with multiple crossings and some bit of sketchy bridges around that area.
We were bound for Yogyakarta, so I think that's more of like the central area in Java, one of the bigger cities. And that's when we also dealt with the Daindels gravel section. So that's like around 40 kilometers of gravel, or just really rough rocky sections, which we had fun with because we race gravel back at home. We got through the gravel section pretty well, just a bit tired, of course, since we were loaded.
Kilometer 817. The gravel section seems to be done, but this is stupid.
But when we got to Yogyakarta, actually before that, we were noticing, or Mark was noticing, that his bottom bracket was really noisy. I guess because the first 3 days was just a lot of rain. So before getting the place to stay, we had to stop at a motor shop. He had to find grease, and then he repacked his bottom bracket with the tools there available in the motor shop. Yeah, I think Mark repacking his bottom bracket then really saved our race, because I guess if he didn't do that, maybe later on during the race, the bearings would have seized or something would have happened that would make it impossible for us to finish the race. So, yeah.
After 4 hours of sleep, I woke up at around 2 a.m., rode out at 2:30. That was intentional because I knew that there was a big climb right after Yogyakarta. So that day was actually a climbing day. So there were 3 big mountain passes there. I just forgot their names, but they were 3 sungay or sampalok level climbs for those who are familiar with those climbs here in the Philippines. So at around 2:30, 3 o'clock, I was climbing the first mountain. They said that it was a beautiful one, but it was all black to me. When I went down the mountain, I was actually surprised that you would just go down around half of it and then climb a bit more, and then go down a bit, climb a bit more, and so on and so forth. That was the whole profile of the first mountain, and then at around lunchtime, I arrived at the second big one, which was pretty similar, but a lot shorter. But at that time, it started to become really, really hot, and it got to me. So when my knee hurt, obviously I stopped again. So I stopped at some random school. I'm not sure if it was a school, but I stopped at some random shed in front of a school. because I couldn't find a store. And when I was just resting, I actually passed out. And then after 15 minutes, I woke up and there were students sitting down on the shed. I tried talking to them, but obviously they don't speak English. So I guess they were just kind of surprised. There was a foreigner just lying down there in their school shed while they're waiting for their school bus. When I got to the third mountain pass, I decided to stop at one of those local iced tea shops. So how it was set up is similar to the lemonade stands that the Americans have. So you would see just random iced tea shops there. That was the same day that Gabby actually found out that those iced tea shops also sold ice. So that was a big help because it was hard to find ice in Indonesia. Some Alpha Marts didn't have ice even. So I stopped at that local iced tea shop, talked to the lady who was selling it, and at that point was one of the most, I think, heartwarming moments of the race for me. So the mother of the girl who was serving the iced tea was running from inside the house and she was screaming, "Bentang Jawa, Bentang Jawa." Because she saw it in the news from the previous day that there were riders from all over the world who were going from the west end to the east end of Java. And they were actually passing their area. So we talked for a bit and then she decided to treat me. Lots of iced tea, but more importantly, she gave me multiple blocks of ice which I put in my bag. I don't remember where I ended the day, but obviously I had some hotel in some area before I started day 5.
Day 5, I think that was when my own morale was really low because I think we computed the time wrong for checkpoint 2 because the distance between checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2 is around over 700 kilometers. If you miss out on, I think we missed out on some targets early on between the 2 checkpoints. So for day 5, that's when we really had to pick up the pace. And then that was when I think I was crying on one of the climbs. I just didn't show it to Mark. But yeah, I really thought that we'd have to end our race that day, that we wouldn't reach the cutoff. But Mark kept saying that, okay, kaya pa, we can still do this. Like at least with like his minimum computed average speed for the rest of the, I think 200 kilometers for that day. So I think that was sort of also the time that we had to do like a team time trial setup that, I was just chasing him. Or we really just had to put in the power for the rest of the day. Mark fell asleep on the descent. So he was like sort of an autopilot down the Tagalombo descent. We again had to pick up the pace, sort of like a team time trial thing again, up to checkpoint 2. So we cut it close to the cutoff. So we got there 40 minutes before cutoff. I think we also overstayed. We overslept a bit after that. We were just so tired. But I think it also helped us for the next day, which was the Bromo climb.
I woke up. I think I rode out at around 2:30 a.m. again because that was now my new strategy to start the day while it was dark, while it was actually cold, and have good progress before the sun was rising. I thought that this day would just pass by, even though I knew that the hardest climb was today, which was Bromo. Mount Bromo is a volcano in Indonesia, and the Bentang Jawa organizers really include it as part of the route, mainly because it's one of the hardest climbs you can actually ever do.
The 40-kilometer approach to Bromo is almost done and we're at the base. So the 26-kilometer climb will start now.
So it was a 26 or 23 kilometer climb, which did not sound so bad. but it had a total elevation gain of 2,300 plus. The only problem was that even though it sounded like it was something that you can actually manage as long as you paced slowly, the local riders told us that the hardest part of it was the last 5 or 7 kilometers, which averaged at more than 20% the whole time. So when I got to the base of Bromo, I was actually with one of the Indonesian racers, Deli. We talked about Bromo because he did it the last year, and he said that he walked for around 3 hours. And for this year, he was just going to walk for 2 hours. But I told him that I wasn't scared, but I was apprehensive because the sun was starting to go down, and I know it would take more than 6 hours just to try and cross it. So we started at the base, gradually climbed for more than a few hours, and then when the sun set, I knew I was already somewhere in the middle of it.
I think we left a bit later. We left a bit later than we should have. We had more sleep in our tank to take on the climb. So it's such a big climb. I think we could equate it to Tinok here in the Philippines, like the new highest point. No, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into because the climb was a lot. Like once you get into that area, you're met with such narrow roads. You're met with incoming traffic. So there are a lot of 4x4s that are going up, going down, and then behind them, which was weird. We also noticed that there were a lot of motorcycles who would like draft behind 4x4. So it seemed really dangerous, but we saw a lot of it happening as we were riding or walking. So yeah, I think we started the climb a bit late. We got to the top, we were biking, then walking, then mostly walking. Because you can't really thread through the road there, not like here, because over there's only like, let's say, enough space for a 4x4 and a motorbike, just that wide. So we had no choice but to walk it going up. And of course we saw Bayan Utu again there. We saw a bunch of other familiar faces going up. So we had our jackets on all, and then we also bought gloves from a local store.
It was supposed to be cold, but as I was going up, I didn't really feel cold. I didn't feel the need to add more layers and whatnot. Mainly, probably because I was still cycling for a bit. When I reached the last 10 or maybe 8 kilometers, that was actually when I realized that I needed to start walking already, because there was a 20% part which was manageable at first, but then it never ended. When you turn the corner, you could actually see that it will become much steeper after that. So I walked for an hour, tried to bike at some parts where it kind of became a little bit gradual, but that was short-lived. I walked for another few hours, and I think right at where people take all of the good pictures, that's where the videographer caught up to me. So they were a pair in a motorcycle. He started talking to me, and I actually joked, "Are you allowed to talk to me, or will I be disqualified if I talk to you?" So he was taking my video actually while I was walking, and at the same time he was interviewing me, asking me about the climb, about the race, and so on. I rested a bit in one of the arches. I just don't know which arch. And then at around 3 kilometers to go, again, I decided to walk.
And then when we got to checkpoint 3, so checkpoint 3 has no cutoff time. It's just like a safety checkpoint. The energy there was really festive. Like they had like coal burning just to make things warmer. You can sit near it to keep warm. Everyone was wrapping themselves in the emergency blanket. So we wrapped ourselves in, we made pants out of the blanket, and then I put some in my jersey to keep warmer. And then on top of that, I had my jacket. And on top of that, I had like another, like a raincoat type thing. And then the raincoat pants over my bib. And then more emergency blanket over my socks. So The checkpoint volunteers or those manning the checkpoint were joking that this was like a costume party and they were judging like who has the best costume.
Kilometer 115 something. Very near the checkpoint. Like 3 kilometers away.
And then when I reached the checkpoint at the top, I was surprised that it was, I think, around 11 or 12 midnight. I remember checking the tracker, and at that time, I was around 30, which wasn't too bad given that I kept stopping. And talked to people there. I realized that Otavo was actually also there, sleeping because I saw his bike. What I realized then was that it wasn't just me having problems. So people were probably also having problems of their own. And with the amount of people I saw passing me, I was really surprised that I was at around 30 at that time. So all of the free beds were taken. So I decided to look for a room right beside the checkpoint. I found one easily. They were ready for us.
So I think we left there around 11 p.m. and I think the temperature there was around 5 degrees or something. But we had to go down just to make good time, just to reach the cutoff at the finish. And then with us again were Bayan Utu and another cyclist. And it was such a hard descent. Like it's road, it's asphalt, but it's broken, like a lot of potholes and all. A bunch of people also crashed in the descent over there, but nothing too serious. But we had to take our time to make sure we were safe.
So after 2 hours, I woke up, fixed my stuff, put on my layers. I did not think that I would need the emergency blanket at that point. I wore a jacket, I wore my gloves, which were not full finger gloves, and then I descended Bromo at around 3 a.m. At the top, it was, I think, 11 or 12 degrees when I woke up. But what I underestimated was that it was so cold going down that it made braking very, very hard, mainly because my fingers were out in the open. It was more than a 20-kilometer climb at night, probably the coldest I've ever felt while biking. It was then that I actually broke down for the first time. So I remember reaching the bottom, which was one of the cities there. And right before an Alpha Mart, I called my wife. I told her, tapos na. 200 kilometers na lang. And I remember sending her a second video telling her na, ang tanga ko, di ko ginamit yung emergency blanket. And that was it. I stopped in the Alpha Mart, had my breakfast, tried to carbo load because I knew I would just push for the remaining kilometers until the finish line. So the last kilometers were a breeze, mainly because everything was going downhill. So I think it was more than 100 kilometers worth of descent. It wasn't steep, but it was a gradual downhill across different towns and stuff.
So yeah, we got through the descent and then we stopped like at a rest stop, so like a warung in the middle of at the end of the descent, where a bunch of people were resting and we were all taking off the extra emergency blanket, the costume that we put on to keep warm. So yeah, I think after that we barely had any sleep. We really just had to keep the pace going, keeping breaks as minimal as possible.
At around 50 kilometers from the finish line, I started to time trial to see if I can just push for the remaining 2 hours to finish the race. After an hour, I burnt out and then I stopped at multiple Alpha Marts again and just ate all the ice cream I had. I could. I was actually sending pictures to all my friends, to my wife, of the different ice cream cones that I was eating. I think I stopped more than 4 or 5 times in the last 30 kilometers just to eat ice cream and have tea.
The last highlight leading up to the finish line was the Gumitir gravel section. So I think we had less than 150 to go, but we didn't realize that I think around 20 kilometers of that would be uphill and downhill gravel, like really rocky gravel sections. And again, this was a passageway. Like I think this was even more narrow than Bromo, and you had motorcycles behind you, you had motorcycles incoming from the other side. Yeah, I just really had to follow Mark's reassurance that I could do it, that we could do it. And yeah, we got through the climbs and descents safely. And I think at some point it became a bit more fun. And then yeah, after that, it was just another surge of power down to the finish.
When I arrived in the finish line, so we were actually 3. So it was Delhi again, who I met climbing before Bromo. And then one of the guys who was with me while I was climbing Bromo. So I was the 3rd of the 3. The finish didn't really feel super special. I thought I'd cry, but I didn't. Maybe because I used it up already in the previous days. When I reached the finish line, I saw the live stream. I immediately went inside. I saw Otavo, who was still in his jersey, eating his pizza and having his beer. I almost punched him, but I said thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and that was a good challenge. And then I ate my pizza first before doing my post-race interview. So that was one of the good things about the race. They do post-race interviews right after you finish. So everything's fresh. They talk about how was the race, how did you do, you feel like you achieved your goals, would you do it again? One of the funniest moments was the interviewer telling us that on the right side was a table for the registration in 2026. And then if we would register at that point, we would get a big discount. Of course, there were only 2 or 3 who registered.
Yeah, I think at that point I was just tired, just frustrated. I realized how much time went into unnecessary breaks. Like getting to the finish line, like I was seeing the last kilometers on my chorus, last 5 kilometers, last 1 kilometer, and then you can see the finish line within the map. We turn right, leading up to the hotel, and then we see Otavo and Rio like waving at us, and everyone's cheering, and then we get there. Let's go! I was just so tired, and then I realized that I didn't get to put on any sunscreen throughout the first 3 days because it was raining. So the race was so long. That my sunburn already turned brown and was already peeling. So I realized that, oh, you're riding for a week now. So yeah, and I was really looking forward to the beer at the end of the race and a good shower. So yeah.
I think I'd do it again as a revenge ride, most of all. Not for fun anymore, but I think I would do it again to try to beat my time. I was far from my target, which was 100 hours. So I was 32 hours more than my target. Someday I will probably do it again.
Yeah, I think I'd do it again. I think if I had more preparation, but I think I'd stick to the same gearing. I think that made me really appreciate my gearing for the race.
To anyone who wants to do an ultra, maybe not just Bentang Jawa, but an ultra, you can do it, but be ready to train a lot for it. be ready to let go of everything during the race. So you need to let go of work, you need to let go of your friends, you need to let go of social media during the race and just concentrate on yourself.
Basta if you think you can make the time, you think you can do it. Even if you miscomputed the targets and you think you can still do it, you can do it.
Is there anything you'd like to say to Mark?
Thank you and sorry.
I don't think you need to be a strong cyclist to actually finish it, but you do need to have the commitment to train and to concentrate during the race. And you'll probably make it.